Hello world, welcome back to our 7 keys to introduce the Bible. Today we are in Daniel chapter 2 and Bible key number 4, prophecy. Now you may have noticed that we just skipped a whole lot of story in the Bible, but sometimes it helps to fly over the top of the forest and get a big picture view before you drop in to explore the landscape. And sometimes the Bible does the same thing. Sometimes God skips ahead and tells the story that's coming before it even happens. That is called prophecy. Actually, predictions are just part of prophecy. What prophecy really means is God speaking to mankind, and a huge chunk of the Bible is prophecy. Now, a word of prophecy might be about the past, the present, or the future, or it could be about God's big plan for the whole thing. And that's what we have here. Daniel 2 has been called the backbone of Bible prophecy. I call it the top of the prophecy puzzle box. It helps you see how all the little pieces fit together. And it comes with a story. The year is about 600 BC. The Israelites have been taken captive by Babylon and the great king Nebuchadnezzar. Now here's how the Babylonians worked. They took over kingdoms far and wide, including Israel. And from among their captives, they would pick out the best and the brightest young men to serve the king. So Nebuchadnezzar had wise men, enchanters, sorcerers, and astrologers representing every people and every god you could think of, including the God of Israel. Well, chapter 2 begins with a dream. King Nebi has a dream that hits him hard, and he just can't shake it. So he gathers the wise men and demands that they interpret the dream. But here, the king gets tricky. He refuses to tell them what he dreamed. In verse 5, he insists, "If you do not tell me what my dream was and interpret it, I will have you cut into pieces and your houses turned into piles of rubble." What do you do with that? There's something going on with Nebuchadnezzar here. He's got all the religious gurus you could ever want. He's been following them for years. But this time, he wants evidence. I think he's tired of chasing the gods. Babylon had thousands of them. But this time, Nebuchadnezzar wants proof. Proof that it's not just made up. Tell me my dream and tell me the meaning, or you all die. Well, the wise men can't do it, and the command goes out. Execute them all. But among the wise men are 4 young men from Israel, servants of the living God. Daniel is one of them. I like Daniel. He's one of the greats. He goes to the king to ask for time, and he goes to God to ask for help. And God answers. As you read this story, watch carefully how Daniel talks about God. In verse 27, he tells the king, "No wise man, enchanter, magician, or diviner can explain the king the mystery he has asked about. But there is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries." I like that. The answers you need are not found among men, but there is a God in heaven. He reveals mysteries. So Daniel tells Nebuchadnezzar the dream and the meaning. And the dream is a prophecy, a big one. It reveals God's big plan for the kingdoms of the world. Verse 31, "Your Majesty looked, and there before you stood a large statue, an enormous, dazzling statue, awesome in appearance. The head of the statue was made of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, its feet partly of iron and partly of baked clay." So his dream was a statue of a man, a huge one, with 4 sections in 4 different metals. Daniel explains that the statue represents 4 great kingdoms of the earth, massive empires that would rule far and wide. The head of gold is Babylon. King Nebi should like this. The first world-dominating empire. But then his kingdom would not last. No man-made kingdom will last forever. The next empire is the silver torso, the Medo-Persian Empire. Then the bronze belly, the Greek Empire of Alexander the Great. And finally, the legs of iron, Rome, strong and ruthless. Now remember, most of this is being told in advance, 600 BC. The prophecy here is very broad, and you could write it off as a lucky guess. But this is just the opener, the big picture. In chapters 7 through 12, Daniel is given prophecies with pinpoint accuracy, details about individual kings and generals, from Alexander the Great to Cleopatra to Jesus, to things only a historian would know. And that's the trick of it. Only a historian would know. But Daniel's not a historian. He's a prophet. The prophecies in Daniel's book are so accurate and so precise that modern historians concluded this book must have been written in about 50 AD. That is, until a copy of Daniel was discovered that is older than many of the events prophesied. In fact, Daniel was part of the Septuagint translation, dating back to 285 BC. Well, there's a lot more to this story. Bible prophecy spans the ages, from ancient history to modern times, to future yet to come. It's amazing. I definitely encourage you to dig into Daniel's book. We have more audio guides for Daniel on the Through the Word app. But for now, Nebuchadnezzar's dream isn't quite over. The 4 kingdoms from Babylon to Rome are given, but that last kingdom changes. The iron in the legs becomes iron mixed with clay in the toes. This is another kingdom, rebuilt out of the old Roman Empire. It's the kingdom of the Antichrist in the final days of the earth. And then something happens in the dream. Back in verse 34, while you were watching, a rock was cut out, but not by human hands. It struck the statue on its feet of iron and clay and smashed them. So the whole statue, every man-made kingdom, crumbles to dust. And back in Daniel, the wind then swept them away without leaving a trace. But the rock that struck the statue became a huge mountain and filled the whole earth. Daniel explains that the great rock is another kingdom. In verse 44, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never be destroyed. This is what prophecy is really all about. It's God's kingdom. This is the backbone of Bible prophecy. The kingdoms of man, the great man-made monuments to ourselves, have come and gone like ancient statues. But the kingdom of God is a rock, not cut by man. God will establish it. As you read the Bible, watch for his kingdom. Miss the kingdom, and you miss the whole story. In all you're seeking, seek first his kingdom. Well, that's all for Bible key number 4. The door is open. Go in and explore. I'll meet you back here for key number 5. And tomorrow, we meet the King.